that moment that we just had of you guys chanting my company's name, that's it. I've hit my high point for the year. 2023 is done. So, I wake up in a foreign city, in a foreign country, in a foreign continent, with nothing to do for the rest of my life. And that has never happened to me before. See, I started doing theater before I remember. There are literally pictures of me playing Snow White in preschool, and I don't remember it, but I'm told it wasn't the first time I was on stage. So, quick survey. Who here has known since they were, make some noise, don't raise your hands, I can't see either. Who here has known since they was a very small child what they were gonna do with their lives? Make noise. Yeah, that shit's rare. Okay, who figured out as an adult what they were gonna do with their lives? Here's the important one, look around y'all. Who hasn't figured it out yet? This is a very honest crowd, I dig you guys, this is great. Okay, so for everyone who's not in the first group, I need to explain something to you. When you grow up knowing exactly what you're going to do with your life, it is the answer to all of your questions. You don't need religion because you have your destiny instead. There's injustice in the world. I grew up in a neighborhood that was very over-policed, and I saw it. And so what I said, even as a 7, 8-year-old, when I saw how my neighbors were treated, I'm going to do theater that changes the world. When I saw, you hit puberty, you start figuring out who you're attracted to, that becomes like a whole thing. But at least underlying that, you have, I know who I am. I know who my people are. And then, as you get into the world, it's really crazy when you graduate university and then you have to go into the world. But if you have this sense of destiny, it kind of underlies that. It's not what am I going to do with my life, it's how am I going to do this. And so this kept me into my mid-30s. I moved to New York, I studied theater in university, I moved to New York, I did as much theater as I could in a really, really challenging environment. It's kind of hard to talk about it briefly, so I'm just gonna have you guys trust me, it was tough. And then by the time I hit my mid-30s, it just was taking so much more than it was giving. And so I did this show September of 2016, and I didn't tell anyone, but I knew it was gonna be my last show. And when it was done, I turned to my partner and I said, I need a little bit of time. I know you want to move abroad, but I need a little bit of time to process the fact that I'm not going to do what I said I was going to do since I was a very little girl. And my partner's a good guy, so he's like, sure. And then a month later, Trump gets elected. And the next day, I swear to God, we are working through hangovers, trying to figure out how we're going to move. Within a month and a half, my partner figures out how he can work here. And we spend the next 4 months just figuring out how to end our lives in New York. And I've been there for almost 15 years. So there was a lot physically to pack up, but there was a lot of emotional stuff to pack up. There was a lot of people to say goodbye to. There were a lot of people to tell that actually I was quitting. And so I didn't actually think about what was going to happen when I got here. I just had too much to do to get here. And then it's May, so there's this beautiful sunrise over this beautiful floral hofia. Like the courtyard between our buildings is one of the prettiest I've ever seen. And I'm sitting there with coffee and tea, looking at this beautiful, beautiful morning sun and going, oh God, what am I gonna do? Who am I? If I don't have theater, who am I and what am I doing with all of these years that are suddenly spinning out in front of me? No idea. So I start finding out something about the city. And then I start finding out a little bit more about the city and a little bit more. And I discover this story that puts me on a new path. You guys may not know this, but the Jordan of the 1900s was an incredibly, desperately poor area. There's about the same amount of buildings there now as there was back then. And right now there's about 20,000 people in the Jordan. And in the 1900s, there were 80,000. These are buildings without plumbing. The canals were fetid. There were so many cholera outbreaks in the Jordan. And it was a really tough neighborhood. It was also a time in Dutch society as a whole where everyone had a place. There was the Catholic pillar, and there was the Protestant pillar, and there was the socialist pillar. Everyone had their own place in society. It was very structured. So imagine what it's like growing up as one of 14 children of a bricklayer in the Jordan and realizing that you're gay. That van Beeren, I can't tell you how she came to realize that she was a gay woman. But I can tell you by the time she took over her uncle's cafe in the very, very gritty Zeedijk when she was 25, she was out before there was a word for out. She was kind of butch. These pictures of her are really sexy. She's like kind of butch and like leather with a motorcycle and always a cute girl on the back of the motorcycle. So she takes over Cafe Mancha and she turns it into the first modern gay bar in Amsterdam. In the sense of, like, obviously there's a long gay history here, but in the sense of like, this is where you could go for community. And she built it really intentionally. She would sit with her customers, she would sing with them, she would talk with them into the night. And remember, these are a lot of people who don't have, in this society where everyone has a place, these are people who don't have a place. And now they have somewhere where they're welcome, somewhere where they can tell their true stories. For the longest time, I tried to figure out how this like very butch, kind of like counterculture lesbian was really good friends with this Salvation Army lady who was like stalking the red light district around the same time. And eventually I realized, even though their beliefs were totally different, they both were people who wanted to care for the people in this neighborhood. And that superseded any religious difference they had. Unfortunately, this is also a time of a lot of police harassment. So very soon, Cafe Manja starts getting stalked by undercover policemen. So Bet puts a lamp that's shaped like an owl up above the bar. And if she thinks there's an undercover cop in there, she turns the light on. Even with that, she has to prevent her customers from so much as holding hands. And then she figures out a workaround. I'm sure you all know King's Day, yeah? That shit's old. That goes back to Queen Wilhelmina, who's the queen at this point. And people have gone crazy on Queen's Day since it started. So what Bet would do is she'd stand in the doorway and she wouldn't let in anyone she didn't know. And she'd say it's a private party. And under the guise of, oh, we're all being crazy for Queen's Day, men could dance with men, women could dance with women, people could come dressed as whatever gender they felt like. It was this one moment where people could be their true, authentic selves in a society that didn't have a place for that. It should be of no surprise that when the Nazis invaded, Bet then turned Mancha into a way station for the resistance. So you can imagine as I'm reading all this about her, that I'm just completely like falling in love with this woman, right? I'm just gaga-eyed. And then I find this video at Amsterdam Museum where Bet's sister was interviewed. And she was like, you guys know like the tough old Amsterdam ladies from the middle of the last century? She's one of those. She is brutal. And the stuff she says about Bet, she talks about Bet's drinking problem. She talks about the fact that Bet couldn't keep a relationship, that she was seduced woman after woman after woman, but she never stayed with anyone. And at first I was devastated. Like I had been like very nicely building my little idol, my little platform that I could put my idol of Bet on and just kind of stare at. So I was devastated to see this interview. And then I realized something really important. That's inspiring. Bet didn't do everything she did because she was perfect. She was a deeply flawed human being. And despite those flaws, she created this community. And moreover, so she was born in 1902. And if you told her, if I went back in time and told her, hey, guess what? Not only is gay marriage going to be legal within 100 years of your birth, but the world's first gay marriage will happen in Amsterdam, she would say I was lying. I could show her my smartphone and she'd be like, okay, I believe you're from the future, but for some strange reason that I don't understand, you are lying to me about gay marriage. But I realized that community that created at Cafe Plancha, that's why the world's first gay marriage happened here. One of the reasons. You know, I spent my whole young life thinking that I was going to do art to change the world. But that story showed me there are so many ways for us to reach and touch other people. And there are so many different ways to tell stories. And I hope all of us find our way. Thank you.